Welcome to National Parks Traveler, where we explore the national parks and the issues that involve them.
Hi, this is Kurt Repenchek, your host at National Parks Traveler. Have you ever turned to the National Park System to enjoy a new hobby? This past week on The Traveler, we looked at great parks for sea kayaking. There also was good news about the rescue of 4 climbers stranded high on Mount Rainier by high winds and poor weather. And word came that Trail Ridge Road in Rocky Mountain National Park has opened for the season. You can find those and other stories about the parks at nationalparkstraveler.org. In this week's show, we discuss a new film that uses national parks as a backdrop for a story about finding rejuvenation in the outdoors. It's an interesting endeavor that touches on the issues of being overwhelmed by work and life, relationships, as well as the lack of cultural diversity in the national park system. And with summer officially arriving on June 21st, we also offer some tips for staying safe on your national park vacation this summer. We also take a look at an incredible gateway town on the doorstep of Rocky Mountain National Park. What do national parks mean to you? Why do you visit them? Or do you ignore them? Since 2016, the centennial of the National Park Service, the national parks have been in the forefront of American tourism. But that fame has not been without criticism. We've heard concerns over a lack of diversity in the national park system, and about crowds that lessen the experience. At the same time, we've been awed by the sheer beauty of places such as Yellowstone, Yosemite, Acadia, and Zion. Joining us today is Tom Huang, a Chinese-American filmmaker who has found great inspiration in the national parks and wants to share that inspiration with audiences. The vehicle he uses is Find Me, a new film about an emotionally damaged accountant who comes out of his shell to search for a coworker friend who has left clues on her whereabouts in national parks across the West. The film features places in parks such as Zion, Death Valley, and Yosemite. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, how you doing?
I appreciate you breaking out some time to join us today. One thing I noticed is minorities play a key role in your film. Obviously, you play the lead character, Joe, a Chinese American, and we see some African Americans and other ethnicities in the film. Was that intentional in light of the concerns that parks were not being embraced by minorities?
Yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, I'm an independent filmmaker, and the films that I make, I do make a point to kind of show a part of America or that I see, which is a very diverse America. I live in Los Angeles, and Hollywood has its issues sometimes, many times, of showing America as being more than just a white America. So I just made it a little bit of my goal whenever I make my own films to make a diverse cast as possible. To show that, that there are just Americans out there who just happen to be Chinese or happen to be Latino or whatever, and go through are the same kind of people and characters that you see in other roles on mainstream television and movies. And in this case too, with national parks, I do touch a little bit about how minorities in America feel about national parks. Depending on what they are. And one of the characters who happens to be African American in the film, I did have her talk about how, she's an African American who works at who works in an area near Death Valley. And she notices that a lot of people that she sees are actually more foreigners than Americans, and especially Americans that, like from her neighborhood would never have gone. And she just feels bummed that more people from her neighborhood can see something like Death Valley and experience it, because it's affected her and helped her so much, inspired her so much. So yeah, it's definitely a subject that I wanted to touch upon, not too heavy-handedly, because I really still want to tell the story, and also just show more about what the national parks are about. But it's definitely a subject that I wanted to just kind of, highlight a little bit and start some discussion about after people have seen the film.
In your own experience, is that pretty accurate that we do need to make a greater effort, if you will, to bring in more diverse visitors into the park?
Yeah, absolutely. I think National Geographic a few years ago did a survey and found that it's just a very small percentage of people who attend national parks or either African American or Latino or Asian American, and I think there are a lot of different reasons why people think this is an issue. Depending on a lot of it, some of it's cultural, and some of it is socioeconomic, of course.
Sure.
Where I think the other reason I made the film is that I wanted to show people that it's very easy to be able to just go to a national. I want to show people that it can be very easy to go to a national park and just go see something amazing. You don't have to ride a mountain bike in the middle of the desert and fall into a canyon and have to cut your arm off with a pen, or climb El Capitan with no ropes or anything. You just need to just drive there and just park and get out, and you will see some amazing things. And I think that people, a lot of people talk about wanting to go see national parks. I know I have plenty of friends that say, "Oh, I love your pictures. I love seeing what you're doing with your movies, and I always wanted to go." But there's always some sort of mental or physical obstacle that they think is there. And I think that for some cultures and some economic areas, it's like, it's just not on their agenda. And it's, they think they have to buy a bunch of gear or, that it's a big deal to get out there. And I hope to show people that it's easier than they think.
What's your connection with the parks? Does it predate the film?
Yes, absolutely. I actually did not be able to travel to a lot of national parks until after college. I think that my parents, they enjoyed going to Las Vegas and Reno more than maybe a national park. And so, as a child, I didn't spend a whole lot of time. Although, we'd always, we do things like do the national thing, like go to the Grand Canyon, get out, see the Grand Canyon, get back in the car and drive off or whatever. But never, spent a lot of time actually staying in the park and exploring it. It wasn't until I married my wife, who was really interested in the outdoors, and started a blog about how to show families where they could take their kids to the outdoors.
Hmm.
That we really started to do more researching and looking into places to go. That we actually just went to national parks just to explore them and for her benefit for her blog, but also I think more importantly, we did some research into like what was there at each park, and that's how you discover that there's all these things you could do and see at the parks, and they don't necessarily involve walking around a bunch of crowds. It's a place you can go and kind of just be with your family and take them on a little adventure and see some amazing things and really feel like you're alone with nature, and I think it really helps you feel connected to what you're seeing.
You also highlight in the film the stress of work and relationships that many in today's society struggle with. Are parks an antidote to that?
I believe so. I think that I think especially for people who yearn to see the outdoors and who like watching all the Discovery Show channels or whatever, and but just don't do it. I think that's like the people that I hope to speak to, because it might not be for everyone, but I really do believe that like people have many people have a sense of adventure they want to they want to quench, and they watch something like Free Solo or talk see things about people climbing Mount Everest, and then they just think that's what they have to do it, and people get caught up in work and life, understandably. And in the case of the character in my film, he has this kind of yearning to go out and see things and experience these things, but just gets caught up in life. And he has to pay for a family, and he's always been brought up to do the right thing as far as making sure you take care of the people around you, and that requires time commitments. And he just constantly uses that as an excuse not to get out. I think that's what happens, and I think you just need to do it. You need to break the chain of whatever your time commitment is, and because that will burn you out and get you down, and I think really emotionally damage you. Just in addition to everything else in life, and if you just take the time to go out and see it and disconnect yourself from all these other obligations, even for a weekend or a day, I think it does some really great things for your psyche. And in addition to letting yourself get in touch with the outdoors.
Boy, you're so right about that. We're talking today with Tom Huang, a Chinese-American filmmaker who is behind the new film Find Me, a movie about finding restoration and rejuvenation in the national parks in today's hectic world. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back.
Listener and reader support make National Parks Traveler possible every day of the year. If you enjoy Traveler's content, please consider a donation via nationalparkstraveler.org. Washington State is graced with 3 spectacular national parks, each different and special in their own unique ways. As the official nonprofit partner and the only philanthropic organization dedicated exclusively to supporting these parks through charitable contributions, Washington's National Park Fund has a mission to deepen the public's love for, understanding of, and experiences in Mount Rainier, North Cascades, and Olympic National Parks. Share your passion for these parks at WNPF.org. Dry Tortugas National Park, 70 miles from Key West, just very well might be the most remote national park in the lower 48. But when you arrive, you're surrounded by crystalline waters for snorkeling, kayaking, and relaxing on pristine beaches. There are sunken wrecks to explore, coral reefs swarming with colorful marine life, and history in the brick walls of a Civil War-era fort. The Yankee Freedom 3, departing from Key West, can get you there in a little more than 2 hours. Visit them at drytortugas.com.
Okay, we're back with Tom Huang, a Chinese-American filmmaker behind the vehicle Find Me, a new film about an emotionally damaged accountant who comes out of his shell to search for a co-worker friend who has left clues on her whereabouts in national parks across the West. Tom, the film, without trying to give away too much, deals with loss and pain and redemption. It's an interesting package against the backdrop of the national parks.
Yeah, I first decided to make the film when I was kind of in between movies and really wanted to make something. And I was actually hiking in the Narrows at the Zion National Park, which, if people don't know, is just an amazing trail where you basically hike in a river that cuts through this amazing gigantic slot canyon in Zion. And I'm looking up at these towering canyon walls, and I just thought, you know what? I want to make a film where people see this on the screen, point to it, and say, I want to go there. And I think the reason, so I just started writing the script when I got home, and I just thought to myself, like, why do I want people to say that and actually experience this? And I think that part of it is definitely like whenever I go to these places and I'm able to see these things in person, it just really puts the world into perspective and helps me feel like, the world is a bigger place, and that these problems that happen in life, if you put them in perspective, you could overcome them and not feel like it has to like completely take over your life. And after I made the film, just about everyone who has seen the film has mentioned something about that, how like they go to the outdoors to heal and to kind of like reconnect to what they want to do in life and reconnect with themselves. And I think that, these hikes that I chose are ones where, oftentimes you could find yourself just alone and able to, put some perspective on life and think about life while being in this big, beautiful place. And I think it really helps put your life in perspective. And so, yeah, I really feel like that's something that can help someone who, is going through a bit of stress or emotional turmoil.
Do you think that here in the 21st century that we're getting too far away from nature and just the rawness of the natural world, and we're getting too caught up in technology and smartphones and Snapchat and all that stuff?
Yeah, I have a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old, and as much as we take them outdoors, I definitely see that. And I think that, it's kind of a natural progression of the way technology is going, that it's easier to disconnect from the real world. It's getting constantly easier to do it, and when it gets easier, then people will tend to want to do that. I definitely think it's an issue that people now, even like the small thing with like streaming things like Netflix and everything like that, which is a great technology. But it just makes it easy just to sit in your house and watch 10 episodes of some show in a row, and just like all of a sudden it's like 3 a.m. and you're going to bed, and getting up and going to work or do whatever you do every day again, and you come back and it's just easy to watch 4 or 5 more shows. In addition to just like social media and staying disconnected. So yeah, I think that it's definitely an issue, and I think that if you just get people to take that first step to go out and see a national park just once, and break out of that cycle they're in, I think that shows people like, wow, this is what I'm missing. I forgot what I'm missing out here, and it helps people like make sure that they keep getting out there again. I think that it's just that when it becomes a prolonged time when people get into their little cycle of habits, and that social media and technology kind of exasperates that. It makes it tougher to break out of the shell.
It does. It does. Now, you said you're based in Los Angeles. Is there a particular park you like to head to specifically to find that rejuvenation?
LA actually has. LA is really a sprawling, spread out city. It's not like New York or something where everything's in one central area. So there's actually quite a few. LA is great because you have the beach nearby, and then you can also drive to the mountains. And in between, there's a lot of just nice little hiking areas. But I think for me, locally, I just love getting out to the Malibu beach area, getting out to some of the state parks up there, where it's kind of less crowded with people, beachgoers and stuff. But you're in these. One of my favorites is El Matador State Park, which you basically have to step down into this long pathway to get down to the beach, and you're just in this area of just sea caves and beach area, and it's just a great place just to hang out and see some tide pools and sit in a sea cave and just watch the ocean and kind of like rejuvenate. So that's probably my go-to place locally. And then we're only about a 4-hour drive to Yosemite and also Death Valley. So that's also a favorite place if I want to go on a weekend. I need to get out. Those are probably my go-to places.
Yeah, nice. Okay, Tom, the film came out on May 31st. Where can folks see it?
You can see it on Amazon.com, actually. You can download it and rent it right now. And eventually it's going to be on Google Play and iTunes and all those other platforms. And then further on down the line, it'll be on Amazon Prime. But right now, you can definitely download or rent it video on demand on Amazon. And I'd love to have you take a look at it if this sounds interesting to you.
All right. Well, we've been talking today with Tom Huang, a Chinese-American filmmaker who found great inspiration in the national parks and wants to share that inspiration with audiences across the country. The vehicle he uses is Find Me, a new film about finding rejuvenation in the national park system. Tom, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
RV Share provides not only an option for renters to enjoy the perks of RV travel without having to buy one, but an opportunity for owners to earn income by renting theirs out. You'll find everything from large and luxurious Class A RVs all the way to small and easy-to-tow pop-up campers. You can even use their filters to find an RV that is dog-friendly or one that will be delivered right to your campground. Visit RVshare.com to start your search for the perfect RV rental or to list your RV. Acadia National Park is one of the 10 most popular national parks in the United States. It is also one of the smallest and most vulnerable. That's why Friends of Acadia exists. Friends of Acadia is an independent organization of passionate people inspiring those who love this magnificent park to make a real and lasting difference for Acadia. You can make a difference at friendsofacadia.org. The Grand Teton National Park Foundation is a private, non-profit organization that supports projects that protect and enhance Grand Teton National Park's cultural, historic, and natural resources. By funding initiatives that go beyond what the National Park Service could accomplish on its own, Foundation donors improve the visitor experience and provide benefits to the National Park System for decades to come. See their successes at www.gtnpf.org.
Drownings, heat stroke, even great white sharks. Like it or not, these are all threats when we enter the national parks during the summertime. With a little common sense, however, and awareness of your surroundings, you can ensure your park vacation will be a great one. Every summer there are tragic outcomes for park visitors who possibly didn't respect their surroundings or anticipate conditions as much as they should have. There are drownings on rivers and lakes in the national park system, hikers who get lost, even visitors who fall into such places as the Kilauea crater at Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. There also are falls from the south rim of Grand Canyon National Park, swimmers who get caught in riptides at the national seashores and drowned, and occasional run-ins with bears. Some years ago, there was even a somewhat rare case of a hiker at Grand Canyon National Park who was suffering from extremely low blood sodium levels, a potentially fatal condition stemming from drinking large amounts of water, perspiring heavily, and failing to eat enough foods to maintain blood salt levels. The hiker reportedly drank large amounts of water, but had eaten very little food. This, coupled with the expected increased perspiration while hiking in hot temperatures, led rangers to believe this visitor was suffering from a potentially life-threatening condition due to low blood sodium levels known as hyponatremia. Sadly, in the weeks and months ahead, there will be additional cases of park visitors being harmed and even killed by events that could be avoided with a little preparation and common sense. If you are heading out into the parks, lakeshores, and seashores this summer, take a little time to recognize possible dangerous situations. If you're swimming at a national seashore, pay attention for possible rip currents, as well as waves that might be larger than usual due to storm systems. Check with lifeguards and/or Park Visitor Center staff for the latest ocean conditions. Even the national lakeshores on the Great Lakes can generate rip currents, so be careful there as well. Cape Cod National Seashore in recent years has seen an increase in the numbers of great white sharks patrolling the ocean waters in search of gray seals. Check with the park staff and lifeguards for the latest conditions to be sure you're safe. If you want to cool off in rivers and creeks of a national park such as Yosemite, Great Smoky Mountains, Shenandoah, or Glacier, be aware that swift currents can quite easily knock you off your feet and send you downstream into hazardous conditions or over waterfalls. While climbing relatively small waterfalls in parks such as Great Smoky or Shenandoah might seem the perfect way to cool off, the rocks can be slippery, causing you to fall and possibly injure yourself or worse. And if you're hiking in one of the Appalachian National Parks, keep an eye on the trail in front of you. These parks are home to snakes, such as the poisonous northern copperhead, and even some timber rattlesnakes, and the last thing you want to do is step on one as you're hiking on the trail. If you find yourself hiking in one of the Southwest National Parks, such as Canyonlands or Grand Canyon, be sure to carry enough water to get you through the day, as well as salty snacks to both keep up your energy and maintain blood salt levels. Also, be sure to dress appropriately with a wide-brimmed hat, quick-drying and light-colored clothing that will reflect instead of absorb the sun's heat, and wear sunglasses and sunscreen to protect your skin. When heading off on a backcountry hike, it's a good idea to check with rangers on trail conditions. Were there any recent storms that might have washed out bridges or raised water levels that might make stream crossings dangerous? In parks such as Glacier and Yellowstone, has there been any recent bear activity in areas where you're heading? Speaking of bears, do you have bear spray? And when boating, be sure you and everyone with you is wearing a U.S. Coast Guard approved life jacket. These lifesavers do you little good if they're floating away from you as you flail about in the water. If you're planning a day-long hike or a longer multi-day excursion into a national park, leave details of your itinerary with friends and family and let them know when you plan to return. And while boulder and cliff scrambling can be fun, if you're not as skilled as you think you are, you could find yourself stuck. Going up is always easier than coming back down. Head out prepared. If you plan on hiking most or all of the day, take a little extra food, plenty of water, rain gear, matches, good maps, and a first aid kit. All these precautions might sound obvious, but it's been demonstrated that when visitors head to national parks for their vacation, they sometimes relax a bit too much and overlook the obvious.
The Blue Ridge Parkway Foundation is the primary non-profit fundraising partner for the Blue Ridge Parkway. It is made up of people who have a deep love for this majestic road and want to ensure that its natural beauty and the experiences it offers endure for generations to come. Show your appreciation at brpfoundation.org. The North Cascades Institute has a large portfolio. It is an environmental learning center, training center, conference center, and leadership center, all set in the splendor of the North Cascades National Park Complex. Learn more at ncascades.org. The Yosemite Conservancy inspires people to support projects and programs that preserve Yosemite National Park and enrich the visitor experience. The Conservancy funds transformative work throughout the park. The grants donors support help protect diverse wildlife and plant species and restore the precious habitats they depend on. Grants also support improvements to miles of trails to ensure visitors can safely access Yosemite's wonders. Visit yosemiteconservancy.org to find more inspiration.
At National Parks Traveler, we're fortunate to get out to the national parks fairly regularly, and we naturally have visited quite a few gateway towns on those travels. In an occasional series, we'll provide you with an overview of some of these towns. So sit back and relax as we kick off this series with a look at Estes Park, Colorado. Your ascent to Estes Park, the front door to Rocky Mountain National Park, is anything but smooth. Climbing up through Big Thompson Canyon from Loveland, Colorado, you twist, turn, rise, and fall with the road as it crawls through the canyon. And as you drive, you'll marvel at the cyclists pedaling those beastly 34 uphill miles. But when you clear the head of the canyon, those miles are immediately forgotten as you gaze out upon what appears to be a far-off realm, a valley cupped by mountains flocked in pines and capped by snow-kissed crags. On the distant horizon jut the peaks of Rocky Mountain National Park. But it's the bucolic valley filled by the town of Estes Park that catches your attention. Lake Estes spreads out across a good portion of that valley, holding back the combined flow from the Big Thompson River and the Fall River, while slowly funneling the water on down the canyon. A horseback riding concession, complete with steeds saddled and waiting early each morning, a mall with grocery, hardware, and a collection of other stores stands across from the lake. You quickly leave that behind once you reach the intersection formed by Big Thompson Avenue, St. Vrain Avenue, and Wonderview Avenue, and are forced with deciding which direction you want to take into the park. Turn right onto Wonderview, and you'll pass the stately, snow-white Stanley Hotel and follow the Fall River past clutches of guest cabins, bed and breakfasts, and small lodges. Go straight, and Big Thompson Avenue transforms into Moraine Avenue that leads you through the park's Beaver Meadows entrance. Turn left onto St. Vrain, and if you veer quickly right onto Route 7, you'll head down the shoulder of the national park to the Longs Peak and Wild Basin trailheads. And, depending on the time of year that you arrive, you just might be greeted by elk crossing some of the streets, or catch the bugling of bulls in the air. The bulls are not heralding your arrival, but rather calling together their harems for the fall rut. Now, since there is no formal lodging inside Rocky Mountain National Park, unless you plan to spend your nights in the tent, Estes Park very likely will be your base camp from which you'll launch daily excursions into the park. And the town, named after a Missouri-born rancher who settled here in 1859, is well suited for the task. The recreational pursuits to be had in the surrounding mountains were noticed soon after the Civil War, with the first dude ranch taking hold near the end of the 1860s and offering guests guided hunting, fishing, and even climbing excursions into the mountains that later would become Rocky Mountain National Park. That bent towards hospitality is stronger than ever today and readily visible in the many welcome signs that sprout along the roads that wind through this valley the Arapaho knew as the Circle. Head up Wonderview Avenue, which turns into the Fall River Road, And after passing all those rustic-looking but comfortably outfitted cabins and rooms for rent, you'll have the option of taking either the historic Fall River Road to the roof of the park in the Alpine Visitor Center, or the main route that runs 2 miles, passing Horseshoe Park along the way to the Trail Ridge Road. Follow Moraine Avenue, and you encounter a slightly different side of Estes Park, one of recreational vehicle parks, amusements, and eateries before entering the Beaver Meadows entrance that leads to park headquarters and to the highly popular Bear Lake area of the park. If you turn left onto St. Vrain Avenue and then onto Route 7, you'll find some slightly less visited areas of the park. Granted, during the summer and into the fall, the turnoff to Long's Peak can get crowded with day hikers and climbers tackling the tallest peak in Rocky Mountain National Park. But if you head farther south, you'll come to the Wild Basin, which opens up a whole nother network of backcountry trails into the park. Estes Park puts all this within easy reach, and the town also offers a wide range of accommodations to fit just about any budget. There are chain motels, charming bed and breakfasts, and relatively simple log cabins, all the way up to deluxe cabins and even dude ranches that you can call home during your vacation. Now, the thing I like about Estes Park is that it really feels like it's part of Rocky Mountain National Park. No, not the Safeway grocery store and its accompanying strip mall, but the sheer layout of the town, set amid thickly forested mountains, streams running downhill, and wildlife strolling through it any time of day. From a small city park along Elkhorn Avenue, your gaze can't help but wander into the park, as Long's Peak is clearly visible on the horizon. Heck, you can even see it from the Safeway parking lot. Now, once upon a time, many decades ago, the National Park's headquarters were right downtown along the creek. Today, with headquarters having relocated just inside the Beaver Meadows entrance, that downtown location has been turned into a wonderful pedestrian mall, complete with flagstone river walk along the rippling Fall River, patio settings on which to enjoy your meals on warm summer evenings, and even a shop where you can sip some of Colorado's wonderful wines. While there are many sides to Estes Park, the one found along Elkhorn Avenue seems most friendly to pedestrians. Perhaps that's because of the Riverwalk, a beautiful expanse of pathways, shops, restaurants, leafy vegetation, and cooling and appealing water. Here you'll find that postcard to send to your friends, the t-shirts for your kids, and the artworks or jewelry for yourself. You can sate your appetite with an Italian menu at Mama Rosa's, where they make their own pasta daily, or venture for a flavor from the other side of the world via Nepal's Cafe, a storefront Nepalese restaurant where you eat at one of 8 or so tables surrounded by photos of Mount Everest and prayer flags. Around town, you can busy yourself for a day or more. The McGregor Ranch Museum guides you through the ranching history of the area. There are fire engine tours at the Stanley Hotel to delight youngsters. And if you head a bit south of town, there is the world's largest key collection, said to contain more than 20,000 keys, at the Baldpate Inn, which will give you your own room key to spend a night or two. And when you're done shopping or eating, on your way back to your vehicle or walk back to your room or cabin, the park is beaming down upon you. From downtown, the park's Beaver Meadows and Fall River entrance roads are 10 minutes distant. Flip a coin to decide which to enter, as neither disappoints. Through the Fall River entrance, Horseshoe Park is another 5 minutes and welcomes you with a large parking area from which you can watch elk cavorting in the meadow or train your binoculars across the mountainside in search of bighorn sheep. Anglers anxious to fish the Fall River often head into the exclosures, fenced-in areas set up to see how the vegetation would fare without heavy browsing by elk. Picnickers and hikers head to the far end of Horseshoe Park and disappear into Endo Valley, where there's a nice day area with picnic tables and fire grates along the river, and trails that take you into the high country. Anxious to reach the really, really high country, but not by foot? Continue up the road past Endo Valley and turn left onto Trail Ridge Road, which slowly but steadily pulls you up to 12,000 feet above sea level, high above the tree line with panoramic views and more hiking options to choose from. Take the Beaver Meadows entrance and, if you're like most traffic entering here, you'll soon turn left onto the Bear Lake Road that leads you past expansive Moraine Park and to one of the park's largest and most scenic front country lakes. No matter how you leave Estes Park for Rocky Mountain National Park, the trip will be quick and reward you with gorgeous landscapes, tumbling waters, and plenty of wildlife to fill your camera. And, at day's end, Estes Park will be waiting for you. That's our show for this week. We hope you enjoyed it. For National Parks Traveler, this is Kurt Repenchek. See you in the parks.
The composers and musicians at Orange Tree Productions have created a unique collection known as the National Park Series that has grown to include more than 30 CD titles. Composed against the backdrop of a park's sounds of nature, these musical scores will connect you with these beautiful places and take you there, at least in your mind. This collection is the #1 selling national park audio series in the world and provides the background music for National Parks Travelers podcast. Visit them at orangetreeproductions.com. National Parks Traveler is a 501c3 nonprofit media organization that provides daily editorial coverage of national parks and protected areas. Traveler's coverage is made possible by reader and listener donations. Visit us at nationalparkstraveler.org.